And gentlemen, if it's okay with you, we're going to start with a little tail of the tape in this Big Ten title game rematch between the Oregon Ducks and the Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, for Penn State, what a massive moment as they've been kind of working their way through the early season schedule. And then the Ducks maybe starting a little bit lower on the radar than Penn State, just an absolute war machine early. And so when we're starting to look at how these teams are stacking up, you can see based on the stats, there is some decided advantages in favor of the Ducks. But we know that Penn State maybe had been doing a little load management. Maybe they had been just making sure they do enough to get warm and get loose with that experienced roster. So we have to do some real clarity exercises. We have to go through and we've got to be able to determine who's got the best at each of the different positions. We did this with Ohio State, Texas leading into week 1. We're very excited to do it here leading into week 5. We are going to break down our full tail of the tape. We need to figure out which team has the better quarterback, which team has the better running backs, which teams have the better wide receivers, which teams have the advantage on defense, and of course, on the sidelines with coaching. So, Danny Kanell, going to start with you. On one side, we've got Drew Aller, much more experience, a lot higher expectations coming into the season. On the other side, we've got Dante Moore, who has been more productive, albeit, like I mentioned, with a little bit of a different sort of game outlay. Who do you think has the advantage between Oregon and Penn State at the quarterback position?
I hate this question because it should be a slam dunk. It should be an absolute slam dunk. This is Drew Allers, and it's not even close. And the fact that I even have to sit here and debate it for just in my mind for a couple seconds is flabbergasting to me because so far this season, we haven't seen. Did you see the passing touchdown numbers we put up? Only 5 passing touchdowns on the year, 78th in the country. That's so pedestrian from a player that we all thought had to take that next step. Do you know the last time that Drew Aller threw for 250 passing yards? It was all the way back to the USC game, which they won in overtime. That was 250 passing yards. That is not, I didn't even go 300 passing yards. I don't have to, how far you have to go back for that. All that being said, experience does come into play. Like if you said, who do I want to start a program with? I'd probably say Dante Moore, but because of the experience, because it's at home, I'm going to go with Drew Aller. But I almost feel like I'm going to regret this after the game, but I think you have to go to the quarterback that does have 2 years of starting experience. He does have playoff experience. He's played in the Big Ten championship game. So I'm going to go with Drew Aller, but I think this is way closer than I think I want to admit.
Gentlemen?
I agree with Danny. I do think it's far closer than you probably would have thought during the offseason, just considering all the talk and hype surrounding Penn State. I think it really depends how you want to look at it. If you want to go with the experience, if you want to go with the guy who's been in these kind of games before and the guy who's going to be playing at home in front of his home crowd in an electric environment, then you lean Drew Aller. If you're going to go with how they've actually played in 2025, I don't think it's close. I think Dante Moore has been far better than Drew Aller. We talked about those touchdown stats there. Here's another one for you, and I know Bud's probably aware of this. If you go to PFF for big-time throws, Dante Moore's made 7 big-time throws this year. Drew Aller's made 1. That's it. Now, Grant, we could talk about the fact that Penn State has probably been in neutral for most of the season to this point against their non-conference slate, but still, I would like to think that my great quarterback, the guy who's going to be one of the players leading me to a Big Ten title in the playoff, is able to make a few bigger throws against this, bad competition. But to this point, we just haven't seen it. Now, maybe they're saving it for this game. Maybe they're going to come out and he's going to be firing the ball all over the field, tear this Oregon defense apart. Or maybe Drew Aller is just who Drew Aller is and has been for the last few years, and Dante Moore is somebody with the higher ceiling who's going to be the better quarterback in this game. So I'm leaning Moore. I think that if you look at this season alone, the tail of the tape is on Oregon's side here.
Look, so far this season, I think you have to lean Dante Moore. I'm really just split on this. I've seen Drew Aller's track record before. We know he's a guy who is certainly capable of making big-time throws. Dante has certainly made some big-time throws. He's not made a lot of big-time throws under pressure. And to me, like that's probably the differentiator here. We have not seen him pressured much this year. Obviously, Oklahoma State is awful. Oregon State's awful. Purdue's defense certainly is really not Not good at all. So, and Northwestern's, the same. I just don't really think here that we have seen Dante have to operate from dirty pockets and make those big time throws. I'm going to lean on the track record and go with Drew.
Okay. Thank goodness we're not just sitting here because the question is for this game, right? The question's not handing out awards for the first month of the season. We're saying for this game. And yeah, for this game, I think that Drew Aller playing at home with the track record, with the experience. What do they call him? They call him Coach K, right? Andy Kotelnicki, that offensive coordinator. Coach K has been working with Drew Aller, trying to get him ready. And as he's been working a little bit on his body type, something he told us at Big Ten Media Days, let's see if he takes off and runs a little bit, shows some of that new mobility as he shed a couple pounds. Okay, from the quarterbacks to their offensive backfield mates, the running back position. Talk about a known, the known quantity of Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen, one of the best 1-2 punches in college football, has been for quite some time for Penn State. For running back at Oregon, I would say it's been one of the curveballs with the Ducks in terms of we were so locked in on, Mekhi Hughes, the big transfer from Tulane, but instead it has been very much a committee approach, and it has been an approach that has been productive so far because it doesn't matter whether it is Whittington, it doesn't matter whether it is Lamar. There are lots of different contributors who are out there getting it done. Bud, I'll let you get first crack at this. How do you hand out the tail of the tape? Is this easy from the jump to just hand it to Penn State? Or do you think that Oregon's maybe got a little bit more of an argument here with that running back by committee?
Yeah, Chip, and I don't want to slight Oregon here because I think Jaden Lamar has played really well for them, and they clearly have a nice stable of backs. But for me, it definitely is easy. I think Singleton and Allen are total studs, and probably the best duo in the country with all due respect to the guys there in South Bend. So yeah, I think this one is pretty easy. I'm going to give it to Penn State.
Yeah, I'll go with Penn State here as well. I think obviously between Allen and Singleton, you do have the household names everybody's aware of. But I do think that as a whole, Oregon's group of running backs is performing very well. And while if you look at what Penn State's done so far this season, I think Kaytron Allen's played very well. And Nick Singleton has 5 touchdowns. But other than that, I don't feel like Singleton's been the best version of himself that we have seen. I feel like he was far more explosive last year, and we have not seen that really to this point. So I still think overall talent-wise, those two are very good, and I would take both of them over any of Oregon's running backs right now. But I don't think the gap is as wide as it should be.
Agreed, especially considering the expectation coming into the season, because it hasn't been only Drew Aller that they really have struggled to really get going the way you would expect to be. While they've been impressive and Kaytron Allen has delivered, I would agree with you on Nick Singleton has sort of been underwhelming so far. So I think it's a clean sweep for us right here. Chip, you making it across the board?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting, though. We're starting to build out some momentum here in the tail of the tape. A check at quarterback for Penn State. A check at running back for Penn State. Tom, I want to hear from you first here because Penn State, one of the great challenges for James Franklin was with so many knowns on this roster, what was he going to do to help Drew Aller in terms of reloading that wide receiver position? You go and you get Kyron Hudson from USC in the first portal window, then picking up Trevor Pena in the second portal window. Both of those receivers currently 1 and 2 in terms of receptions and receiving yards. But is that enough when you've got DeCorian Moore, one of the star breakout freshmen right there for Oregon, Gary Bryant, a few other, and if we want to include Sadiq as well, one of the best tight ends in the country, let's call it wide receivers / pass catchers. Tom, who has the edge in this matchup?
Yeah, if we're just going to go pass catchers here, I'm leaning towards Oregon. And I think if they still had a healthy Evan Stewart, this would be kind of a runaway for the Ducks, but they don't. But if I'm going to go for the most talented receiver between these two teams, it's Oregon's DeCorian Moore. If I'm going to go for the most talented tight end between these two teams, it's Kenyon Sadiq at Oregon. So I think they have the two best players. That said, I don't think that the gap is huge. I think that the Kyron Hudson and Trevor Pena have come in. They have played very well. They've productive to this point, far more productive than we saw from most of Penn State's receivers last season. So I do think that they have improved that spot. It's just they don't really have the Tyler Warren right now. They don't have the stud option that they're able to go to, but that might be for the better. They become far less predictable on offense that way. But I think this is a very close one. But right now, my edge goes to the Ducks.
Tom, I'm there with you, but I think this is probably closer to a draw than some of these other categories. Clearly DeCorian Moore in my opinion, is the best receiver in this game. I agree with you on Sadiq. My question really becomes the number two there for the Ducks. So Malik Benson at Alabama and at Florida State, when he had to play good competition, he disappeared. He was a guy that with his speed would crush bad competition, but he couldn't really run real routes and he couldn't make contested catches. If Penn State is deciding to take away DeCorian Moore in this game, you're going to have to see Malik Benson actually play up against a good team, which throughout his career he has failed to do. So if he doesn't end up playing up, then I think Penn State actually could have the edge here because their number two, Hudson or Pena, depending on who you think, is certainly better now than when what Benson has been in his career so far. But he's had an encouraging start to this year, so we'll have to see if that can continue.
So I might be the only one that thinks this is a little bit more of a separator. I think it's Oregon and I think it does have to do with two players in DeCorian Moore and Kenny Sadiq who are really special. Like you mentioned, having to game plan for DeCorian Moore, really trying to shut him down. Is there a receiver for Penn State that really just strikes fear? You're like, we cannot let that guy beat you. I don't know. They're all pretty good, and they're a good wide receiving core. But DeCorian Moore early, the way they've been using him, they've moved him all around the field. His route tree is pretty developed for a true freshman. He's shown the ability to pop the top off. His ball adjustment skills, making some back shoulder throws, has been really back shoulder catches, has been really impressive. Now we'll see more physical, more competition. It should be a bigger challenge for him. And then Kenny Sadiq is a unicorn, it feels like. And I know Luke Reynolds hasn't exactly been Tyler Warren. Those were massive shoes to fill. But Kenyon Sadiq is an absolute stud. So I'll give the edge to the Ducks. I think it's a little bit more clear-cut for me.
All right, so that's a check mark at quarterback for Penn State, a check mark at running back for Penn State, a check mark at wide receiver for Oregon. Couple more categories to go. We got to figure out who's got the edge on defense, who's got the edge on coaching, and the storylines we're watching in this top 10 matchup. So coming up on the other side, continuing to break down Oregon at Penn State and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, live on CBS Sports Network, looking at all the different angles, all of the angles at Oregon at Penn State. It's a top 10 matchup. It is one of the biggest matchups in all of college football and certainly in the Big Ten. We are running through the tail of the tape, as we like to do with some of the biggest matchups of the college football season. We've got a check mark for Penn State at the quarterback position. We've got a check mark for Penn State at the running back position. We just gave Oregon its first advantage with the check mark at wide receiver. Now it's time to go to the defensive side of the ball. So Danny Kanell, as you look at this defense, which of course now has a name brand new coordinator in Jim Knowles, leaving off a national championship team and heading over to rival Penn State, but also for Oregon, Tosh Lupoy continuing to get settled into a role of a group that is extremely talented and can be dominant. Who do you give the edge to when it comes to defense?
You're killing me coming to these on what I think are the tougher ones.
This is not a tough one.
Poor Danny.
Oh, see, I think it is. I think it is a tougher one. I'm going to go with Penn State. Deni Dennis Sutton has kind of picked off in this lineage of great pass rushers that have been there. Zane Durant's been incredible in the middle of that defense. The secondary's been incredible. They've looked the part so far. AJ Harris is playing spectacular. I'll go with Penn State. I do think they deserve the pedigree. They've been more consistent, but I don't want to overlook Oregon because of players like Mateo Uyunglele, Bruce Betcher at linebackers, really solid. The interior of that defensive line has been better. I think it's closer, but I'll go with Penn State.
I mean, the hardest part of this comparison is that they haven't played anybody yet, really, that it's going to give you a really, truly great idea of who they are. We're not really going to know until these two are lined up across the field from each other on Saturday night. But just based on the talent level, based on the coordinator, based on everything, I give Penn State a slight edge. Statistically, they've been a little bit better against the run this year than Oregon has. They've had more of a pass rush to this point than Oregon has. But there's also been plenty of times where Oregon's just been, when they're up 60 against Oklahoma State, and they're not exactly bringing the house. They're kind of just sitting there and, killing some clock. So it's hard to say definitively. I think they're both very good. And I think they're probably both going to be top 10 at worst in the nation by the time the season ends. But right now, I think Penn State gets my edge, and also the fact that they're going to be at home. They're going to have the crowd on their side screaming their heads off every time they're on the field to distract the Oregon offense. So I give the edge to the Nittany Lions.
I think it's a very small edge to Penn State for all the points that the guys before me have raised. There is a name for the Ducks, though, who could flip this, and that's Bear Alexander. He's not always the most consistent guy, but like on body types, on ability, like his best is probably the best of anybody in this game. We just don't see his best all that often. But if he decides this Saturday he's going to play up, he's a guy who could single-handedly wreck this game and give it to the Ducks.
Has he been starting? Because Amari Washington has been playing more in the D tackle position, but I think this is a year that's huge for Bear. He's kind of coasted a little bit. You wonder if this is sort of his draft year where he's trying to flip the switch. This would be the game you would expect to see the best of Bear Alexander for sure.
Yeah, he hasn't been anything special so far. Just decent. He's played about 100 snaps, but like you've seen some flashes. You need the consistency.
So if I'm to like push this further to one side, if you're going to give me Oregon's linebackers, I would take that. But I think Penn State's better on the defensive line. I think Penn State's better in the secondary. So, 2-1, a little bit of balance. I'm going to give the check mark to Penn State's defense. Okay, what about James Franklin on one side, Dan Lanning on the other, Bud Elliott? Who has the advantage when it comes to coaching?
Man, it's just so tough because obviously I think you have to have a tremendous amount of respect for both staffs. Kotelnicki and Knowles there in Penn State, and obviously they have a great staff as well at Oregon. I mean, I think it's a coin flip, right? Both guys have won a tremendous amount of games. Both guys have really struggled to win in the big game. Luckily for them, somebody has to win this weekend. So, I guess Penn State because I think I like their DC better, but Lanning also has his fingers in the Oregon defense. So I Penn State like ever so slightly.
You went Penn State?
Wow, but
yeah. All right, I'll go. I think it's close, but I'll go Dan Lanning as far as in the totality of the staff. Will Stein has been an absolute genius offensively. The way he's been able to develop quarterbacks. Dante Moore just feels like he's running a lot of the same things Dylan Gabriel is. I think Tosh Lupoy is one of the better defense coordinators, probably didn't get enough credit. And then I don't know if there's a better, it's funny because was talking to Matt Rule last week. I think he's incredible about getting his team ready to go for him. Dan Lanning might be one of the best motivators for a game specifically like this on the road. And yet they don't have that many great road wins either, but I'll give the slight edge to Dan Lanning.
Dan Lanning's a great motivator. He's going to clip what Bud just said about James Franklin being better than him. He's going to be playing it in his office all week, getting hyped for this game. But he won't have to include me. I think this is a very even matchup, like a lot of the things in this game. I think that the coordinators on both sides, Will Stein, Tosh Lupoy, Jim Knowles, Andy Kotelnicki, are fantastic. The one thing that really tilts me towards Oregon's favor, though, when this is very close, is Dan Lanning is the far more aggressive coach on game day than James Franklin. When the moment gets tough, James Franklin sometimes goes conservative. Lanning is always putting his foot down on the gas pedal. That's the direction I always prefer, so Lanning gets an edge here from me.
Do y'all remember in the 2023 season when Lanning, they failed on the fourth down, but he came back and he said, I would do it again against Washington? Mm-hmm. That speaks what you're talking about. He has an identity. He doesn't waffle. He is the same aggressive, do it because that's what we believe that we can do. I'm with you. I go advantage Dan Lanning, advantage Oregon. I think big game James has shed a little bit of the, the anecdotal evidence that points to him not being ready or having his team ready for these moments, but still some of the decision-making in terms of conservative versus aggressive. I agree with you, Tom. I think that Lanning maybe a little bit of an edge right there. So to review, we've got Oregon advantage at quarterback. We got Penn State advantage at quarterback, Penn State advantage at running back. We've got Oregon advantage at wide receiver and pass catchers. We've got Penn State advantage at defense. And then we've got Oregon advantage at coaching. That is 3 to Penn State. That is 2 to Oregon. Bud, what do you think we have missed in our analysis here? What's some X factors or some storylines that will end up determining this matchup?
So if you watch the rematch in the Rose Bowl last year, when Jim Knowles largely shut down Oregon until garbage time, you saw a Penn State team that denied the run. They denied the explosive play. They allowed the short catch, and they tackled really well. I think that's exactly what Penn State is going to have to do here against the Ducks. I am curious, though, if they decide to do things a little bit differently. Might they bring some more pressure? Might they try to put their hands on Decorey and Moore and on Malik? Might they say, hey, Dante Moore, you have made some difficult throws. You've not had to make a whole lot of tight window throws, and certainly not with a lot of pressure around you. You know, like Will Stein, the Oregon offensive coordinator, does such a tremendous job of getting these free access throws and these run after catch opportunities for his guys. If you're Penn State, you know, do you make Oregon be a little more patient? Do you make that, like, take away that first read and make them sit a little bit more? I think that, like, Jim Knowles' game plan here is going to matter a lot in this game, especially with, you know, clearly the most amount of pressure in terms of pass rush that Dante's going to have faced, and also like the crowd noise there with Penn State.
I just want to know if Penn State can flip the switch, or if this is just who Penn State is, the team that we've been watching, because we've talked about it a lot. They've looked like a team that's kind of just going at half speed in what's a non-conference slate that has not been challenging in any aspect for them. So you're at home, top 10 team coming, the team you lost to in the Big Ten championship. It's a whiteout. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be insane. Will that atmosphere from the crowd kind of partake in what Penn State's trying to do on the field? Because if you look at them statistically, man, like, their passing attack, they are 66th in EPA per dropback. They're 89th in explosive pass rate. And in the red zone, they're scoring 4.59 points per trip. That ranks only 58th. Now, you could say they're only going half speed, but they're also doing it against nobody. And typically elite teams, even against nobody when they're not trying that hard, perform far better than Penn State has to this point in the season. So this is huge for me. This is going to be the biggest part of the game. Do we see Penn State take it up a notch and play at a different level? Or is the team we've seen through their first 3 or 4 games of the year just who they are? And are they in for a world of hurt against this Oregon squad?
I want to see the wrinkles, the things we haven't seen yet. We've all mentioned it several times, like, what are they holding back? And I think that means for offense and defense. I feel like Penn State, I'm hoping they have hold back a lot because they haven't looked that good against the lesser competition. But I will say the biggest X factor for me, do you guys remember what Drew Aller told us when he talked about trimming down? Do you remember what he said? He said he wanted to be a little bit more athletic in the run game. We haven't seen that yet. In the Big Ten championship game against Oregon, he did have 54 yards rushing. He has not he's not run the ball very much so far. I wonder a couple things. One, does he scramble? And do they have designed RPO option type action for Drew Aller to get involved in the run game? Just something to keep an eye out for with Drew Aller.
Great call, Danny. I mean, this is where I have to remember that before Penn State, Andy Kotelnicki had Jalen Daniels, in which you definitely built in some of those, you know, RPO designed quarterback run concepts. Great call. We'll be keeping an eye on that from Penn State's quarterback in this matchup. Again, that is Saturday night, Oregon at Penn State. But